When Rachel Chen received the family group text demanding she contribute $3,000 to their luxury Costa Rican vacation while simultaneously being told she wasn't invited because her presence would ruin the family bonding experience, she couldn't help but smile. What her family didn't realize was that every detail of their dream getaway had been personally arranged through her exclusive travel concierge connections, and with a few phone calls, she could transform their paradise into a very different kind of experience. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Rachel Chen had always been the family fixer. At 31, she had built a reputation as someone who could make impossible things happen, whether it was securing last-minute reservations at fully booked restaurants, obtaining tickets to sold-out events, or arranging seamless travel experiences to the most exclusive destinations. Her career as a luxury travel concierge had given her access to a network of connections that stretched across the globe. But to her family, she remained simply the responsible middle daughter who could be counted on to solve problems and foot bills. The Chen family had always operated on an unspoken hierarchy that placed achievement above affection and success above authenticity. Rachel's parents, David and Linda Chen, had immigrated from Taiwan in their 20s with nothing but determination and a shared dream of building something substantial in America. David had worked his way up from a junior accountant to the CFO of a major tech company, while Linda had transformed her small catering business into a chain of upscale restaurants that catered to the city's elite. Their success story was impressive, inspiring even, but it had come at the cost of creating impossible standards for their three daughters. Eleanor, the eldest at 34, had followed the path her parents had mapped out with military precision. She was a successful cardiologist, married to another physician, living in a sprawling suburban mansion with her two perfectly behaved children. Eleanor's life looked like something out of a medical drama, complete with the designer wardrobe, luxury vehicles, and annual family portraits that graced their Christmas cards. She spoke in measured tones, made decisions based on spreadsheets, and treated family interactions like board meetings, where efficiency was valued above emotional connection. The youngest daughter, Sophia, had taken a different approach to earning parental approval. At 28, she had parlayed her natural charisma and striking appearance into a successful career as a lifestyle influencer and brand ambassador. Her social media presence showcased a carefully curated existence filled with designer clothes, exotic locations, and partnerships with luxury brands. Sophia's approach to life was aspirational by design, every moment calculated to present the image of effortless perfection that her hundreds of thousands of followers craved to see. Then there was Rachel, caught between her sisters' different brands of success, carving out her own path in the world of luxury hospitality. While Eleanor impressed with her medical expertise and Sophia dazzled with her social media empire, Rachel operated behind the scenes, making magic happen for other people. Her work required discretion, relationship building, and an intuitive understanding of what people truly wanted versus what they thought they needed. She had developed an reputation among her high-profile clients for anticipating needs before they were expressed and solving problems before they became crises. The irony was that Rachel's professional skills made her invaluable to her family, even as they consistently undervalued her contributions. When Eleanor needed impossible reservations for medical conference dinners, she called Rachel. When Sophia required exclusive access to events for her content creation, Rachel made it happen. When their parents wanted to impress business associates with unique experiences, Rachel orchestrated every detail. Yet somehow, despite being the family problem solver, Rachel was consistently treated as the least successful of the three sisters. The pattern had been established early. During family dinners, conversations centered around Eleanor's latest medical breakthrough or Sophia's most recent brand partnership. Rachel's stories about coordinating a week-long luxury safari for a Fortune 500 CEO or arranging a surprise anniversary celebration on a private island were met with polite interest before the conversation inevitably shifted to her sister's more traditionally impressive accomplishments. Her parents had never quite understood what Rachel actually did for a living, viewing her career as something adjacent to event planning or travel agency work, rather than the sophisticated relationship management and logistics coordination it actually required. The family dynamics became particularly pronounced during their monthly dinners at Linda's flagship restaurant. The private dining room would be perfectly set, the carefully selected wine pairings would complement each course flawlessly, and the conversation would follow a predictable pattern. David would update everyone on his latest corporate acquisitions and financial strategies. Linda would discuss expansion plans for the restaurant chain and upcoming media appearances. Eleanor would share updates about her medical practice and her children's academic achievements. Sophia would present metrics about her growing social media influence and upcoming brand collaborations. Rachel's contributions to these conversations were often practical rather than impressive. She might mention helping a client navigate a complex international travel situation or successfully coordinating a multi-city corporate retreat, but these accomplishments somehow seemed smaller in comparison to her sister's more quantifiable successes. The unspoken message was clear. Rachel was useful, reliable, and competent, but she wasn't exceptional in the way that mattered to the Chen family's definition of success. This dynamic had persisted for years, with Rachel gradually accepting her role as the family's behind-the-scenes facilitator. She had stopped expecting recognition for her professional achievements and had learned to find satisfaction in the work itself, rather than in her family's acknowledgement of it. Her clients appreciated her unique blend of creativity, resourcefulness, and attention to detail, and she had built a thriving business based on referrals from satisfied customers who valued her ability to exceed expectations consistently. The relationship with her family wasn't entirely negative, Rachel told herself during moments of frustrated reflection. They do care about her in their own way, and they certainly relied on her more than they realized. The problem was that their caring came with conditions and expectations that were never explicitly stated but always present. Rachel was expected to be available when needed, supportive when others succeeded, and undemanding when it came to recognition or reciprocation. This background of conditional acceptance and utilitarian love set the stage for what would become a defining moment in Rachel's relationship with her family. The annual Chen family vacation had been a tradition for nearly a decade, an elaborate week-long trip that served multiple purposes: family bonding, social media content creation, and professional networking opportunities. Previous destinations had included exclusive resorts in the Maldives, private villas in Tuscany, and luxury lodges in New Zealand. The planning process for these trips typically began months in advance, with extensive discussions about potential destinations, accommodations, and activities. Rachel had always been involved in the planning process, not because her input was particularly valued, but because her professional connections and expertise made the logistics significantly easier and more cost-effective. She had never been credited as the primary planner, but her behind-the-scenes contributions had consistently elevated these trips from ordinary vacations to extraordinary experiences that her family would remember and discuss for years afterward. This year's destination selection had been particularly challenging. Eleanor wanted somewhere that would provide excellent photo opportunities for her medical practice's social media presence. Sophia needed a location that would offer diverse content creation possibilities and strong Wi-Fi connectivity for real-time posting. Their parents preferred destinations that combined luxury with cultural significance, places that would provide interesting conversation topics for their social and professional circles. After weeks of research and consultation with her industry contacts, Rachel had identified the perfect solution: an exclusive eco-luxury resort in Costa Rica's Guanacaste province. The property offered stunning Pacific Ocean views, world-class amenities, and unique experiences that would satisfy everyone's requirements. The resort was also notoriously difficult to book, with a waiting list that typically extended for over a year and rates that exceeded most people's annual vacation budgets. Rachel's relationship with the resort's management company, cultivated through years of sending high-profile clients to their properties, had made the impossible reservation possible. She had spent hours coordinating with the resort's concierge team, arranging special experiences and amenities that weren't typically available to guests. The package she had assembled included private yoga sessions on the beach, guided tours of local coffee plantations, helicopter excursions to nearby volcanoes, and exclusive access to a marine biologist who would provide personalized wildlife education experiences. The total cost for the week-long experience was substantial, approaching $40,000 for accommodations, activities, and transportation. The family had discussed the financial arrangements during one of their monthly dinners, with David suggesting that they split the cost equally among the three sisters and parents. This arrangement would have required each family unit to contribute $8,000, a significant expense, but one that was manageable given everyone's financial circumstances. Rachel had agreed to this arrangement without hesitation, despite the fact that her income as an independent business owner was less predictable than her sister's salaries or her parents' established wealth. She valued family time and was willing to make the financial sacrifice to ensure that everyone could enjoy the experience she had worked so hard to arrange. The first indication that something was wrong came during a conversation between Eleanor and Sophia that Rachel accidentally overheard while visiting Eleanor's house to drop off some documents her sister had requested. The two sisters were in Eleanor's kitchen, discussing vacation preparations with the casual assumption that Rachel wasn't present. "I'm so glad we decided to make this just the four of us," Eleanor was saying as she organized prescription medications for her upcoming trip. "The dynamic is always so much better when it's an even number. And honestly, Rachel has been bringing some negative energy to these trips lately." Sophia nodded while reviewing her planned outfit combinations on her tablet. She's been struggling with her business more than she admits, and that stress just brings everyone down. Plus, her whole vibe is just different from ours, you know? We're trying to celebrate and enjoy ourselves, and she's always worried about logistics and details instead of just being present. Eleanor agreed with a resigned sigh. "The money situation is perfect now, too. Instead of splitting it 5 ways, we can each contribute $10,000 and have even more budget for extras. Rachel doesn't really need to be there for us to have a good family vacation." Rachel stood frozen in the hallway, document folder clutched in her hands, as the reality of what she was hearing sank in completely. Her family was planning to exclude her from the vacation she had spent months arranging, while simultaneously restructuring the financial contributions in a way that would still require her to pay her original $8,000 share despite not being invited to participate. The conversation continued for several more minutes, with her sisters discussing the reasoning they would present to their parents and to Rachel herself. They had convinced themselves that Rachel would actually prefer not to go, that the expense was burdensome for her, and that the family dynamics would be healthier without her presence. The twisted logic of their rationalization was breathtaking in its selfishness and stunning in its lack of self-awareness. Rachel quietly placed the documents on Eleanor's hall table and left the house without announcing her departure. The drive home was a blur of emotion and disbelief. She had dedicated months to creating the perfect vacation experience for her family, leveraging her professional relationships and expertise to secure accommodations and experiences that were typically impossible to obtain. Now she was being excluded from enjoying the fruits of her own labor while still being expected to finance the experience for people who had decided she was detrimental to their enjoyment. The official conversation about her exclusion came 2 days later, delivered through a carefully orchestrated family conference call that had clearly been rehearsed. Linda, speaking with the diplomatic tone she used for difficult restaurant management situations, explained that they had been reconsidering the vacation plans and felt that a smaller group might be more conducive to meaningful family bonding. "We know how stressed you've been with work lately, honey," Linda said with practiced sympathy, "and we thought you might actually appreciate having some time to focus on your business instead of feeling obligated to spend money on a vacation when you're working so hard to build your client base." David jumped in with the financial rationalization. "We've restructured the payment arrangement so that your contribution can be smaller while still helping the family afford this opportunity. Think of it as an investment in family relationships that will benefit everyone in the long run." Eleanor and Sophia remained largely silent during this conversation, allowing their parents to deliver the exclusion message while avoiding direct confrontation with Rachel. This cowardly approach was characteristic of how her family handled uncomfortable situations, delegating the difficult conversations to others while maintaining plausible deniability about their own involvement in hurtful decisions. The amount they expected Rachel to contribute had been adjusted to $3,000, a reduction that was presented as generous consideration for their financial circumstances rather than the manipulative gesture it actually represented. They were asking her to pay for nearly a week of luxury accommodations and exclusive experiences that she would not be permitted to enjoy, while framing this arrangement as somehow beneficial to her personally. Rachel's initial response was stunned silence. The audacity of the request was so overwhelming that she couldn't immediately formulate words to express her feelings. The family interpreted her silence as acceptance, or perhaps relief, and quickly moved the conversation toward practical details about timing and logistics. After ending the call, Rachel sat in her apartment staring at her computer screen, where she had been working on final confirmations for her family's Costa Rican itinerary. Every detail of their vacation had been personally arranged through her connections and expertise. The resort reservation that her family considered a stroke of incredible luck had actually required Rachel to call in multiple professional favors and agree to send several future clients to the property. The exclusive experiences they were anticipating had been negotiated through relationships Rachel had built over years of consistent business referrals. The more Rachel considered the situation, the more she realized how completely her family had underestimated her role in creating their perfect vacation. They viewed her as a convenient financial contributor who could be excluded without consequences, apparently unaware that she was also the invisible force behind every aspect of their travel experience. Her professional relationship with Costa Rica's luxury hospitality industry was extensive and carefully cultivated. The property manager at their chosen resort had become a personal friend through years of collaboration. The concierge team knew Rachel by name and regularly reached out to her when they had clients seeking similar services in other destinations. The helicopter tour company, the private chef service, the marine biology guide, and the transportation company had all been selected based on Rachel's direct experience working with their teams. More importantly, Rachel realized that her position as the arranging concierge gave her unprecedented control over every aspect of her family's vacation experience. The resort staff viewed her as their primary point of contact for this reservation. Any changes, special requests, or problems would be directed through her rather than directly to the guests. She had the authority to modify arrangements, cancel services, upgrade experiences, or implement any other changes she deemed appropriate. The question that began forming in Rachel's mind wasn't whether she had the power to impact her family's vacation, but rather how she wanted to use that power. The initial impulse was revenge, of course. The fantasy of canceling their entire reservation and leaving them stranded without accommodations was immediately appealing. She could easily sabotage their trip in ways that would be impossible for them to trace back to her, creating the kind of vacation disaster that would serve as poetic justice for their treatment of her. But Rachel's professional training had taught her to think strategically rather than reactively. The nuclear option of completely destroying their vacation would provide temporary satisfaction, but would ultimately damage her own professional relationships and reputation. Her industry contacts had arranged these services as personal favors to her, and burning those bridges for the sake of revenge would be professionally self-destructive. More significantly, Rachel realized that this situation represented an opportunity for something more meaningful than simple retaliation. Her family's decision to exclude her while still expecting her financial contribution had revealed the extent to which they took her efforts for granted and misunderstood her professional capabilities. Rather than simply punishing them for this misunderstanding, she could use the situation to educate them about her actual value and demonstrate the consequences of treating her as disposable. The plan that began forming in Rachel's mind was more sophisticated than mere sabotage. She would allow her family to proceed with their vacation plans, maintaining the illusion that their exclusion of her had been successful. However, she would systematically remove the special touches and exclusive access that her personal connections had made possible, replacing their carefully curated luxury experience with the standard tourist experience that any ordinary traveler might have. This approach would require careful coordination with her industry contacts, but Rachel was confident that her professional relationships were strong enough to accommodate these unusual requests. The resort management would understand her position once she explained the family dynamics involved, and the various service providers would be willing to adjust their offerings as requested. The beauty of this plan was that her family would still have a perfectly adequate vacation. They would stay at a beautiful resort, enjoy excellent accommodations, and experience Costa Rica's natural beauty. However, they would not have the extraordinary, once-in-a-lifetime experience that Rachel's expertise and connections had originally arranged for them. They would see exactly what their vacation would have looked like without her invisible contributions. Rachel spent the evening making a series of carefully worded phone calls to her Costa Rican contacts. She explained that there had been changes to her family's travel plans and that she needed to adjust their service level accordingly. The resort property manager, Carlos, was immediately understanding when Rachel explained the situation. Family can be complicated, Carlos said, with the wisdom of someone who had worked in hospitality long enough to witness every possible family dynamic. You want them to have a good experience, but perhaps not the extraordinary experience you had originally arranged? Exactly, Rachel confirmed. Standard service, standard amenities, standard tourist experiences. Nothing bad, but nothing special either. They should get exactly what any other guest would receive if they booked this trip without personal connections. Carlos agreed to make the necessary adjustments. The family's accommodation would remain the same, but the complimentary room upgrades Rachel had arranged would be removed. The private beach cabana reservations would be canceled. The personalized welcome amenities would be replaced with standard arrival offerings. The reserved poolside seating would become first-come, first-served availability. Similar conversations with the helicopter tour company, the private chef service, and the marine biology guide resulted in downgrades from exclusive private experiences to standard group tours that would be shared with other tourists. The transportation arrangement was changed from private luxury vehicles to the resort's standard shuttle service. Each of these changes individually might seem minor, but collectively, they would transform her family's vacation from an exclusive luxury experience to a standard high-end tourist trip. They would still enjoy beautiful accommodations and pleasant activities, but they would also encounter the crowds, wait times, and generic service that most travelers accept as normal. The most significant change Rachel implemented was regarding her own potential arrival. Instead of being excluded from the vacation entirely, she decided to surprise her family by appearing at the resort midway through their stay. She would book her own accommodations, using her industry connections to secure an even better room than her family's standard reservation, and she would demonstrate exactly what level of service and access her professional relationships could provide. This plan would require Rachel to invest additional money in her own travel expenses, but she viewed this cost as an investment in her family relationships and her own professional development. She would document the experience for her own business purposes, using it as a case study in the value of professional travel concierge services. Over the following weeks, as her family prepared for their Costa Rican vacation, Rachel finalized her own travel arrangements and coordinated the various service adjustments with her industry contacts. Her family occasionally mentioned their excitement about the upcoming trip during their regular interactions, apparently confident that their exclusion of her had been handled diplomatically and that she harbored no resentment about the arrangement. Their confidence in this belief was both insulting and amusing to Rachel. They seemed to assume that she was grateful to be relieved of the financial burden and obligation of family vacation time, never considering that she might have actually wanted to participate in the experience she had worked so hard to create. This assumption revealed the depth of their misunderstanding about her priorities and values. The $3,000 payment they had requested was transferred to Eleanor's account without comment or complaint from Rachel. She treated it as a business expense, maintaining detailed records for her own financial management purposes. The payment confirmation seemed to satisfy her family that the entire arrangement had been handled fairly and that Rachel was content with her exclusion. As the departure date approached, Rachel's anticipation grew stronger. She had never undertaken such an elaborate demonstration of her professional capabilities, and she was curious to see how her family would react when confronted with the reality of their vacation experience versus their expectations. Would they recognize the difference between the standard service they received and the exceptional experience they had been anticipating? Would they understand that this difference was directly related to Rachel's expertise and connections? More importantly, would this experience lead to any meaningful changes in how her family viewed her contributions and treated her in future situations? Rachel was realistic about the possibility that her family might not learn the lesson she was trying to teach, but she was committed to the demonstration regardless of the outcome. The day before her family's departure, Rachel received a cheerful group text message showing them at the airport, posed with their luggage and boarding passes. The message included hearts and airplane emojis, along with comments about how excited they were for their family bonding experience. The casual cruelty of sending this message to the family member they had specifically excluded was probably unintentional, but it strengthened Rachel's resolve about her planned intervention. Her own departure was scheduled for 3 days later, allowing her family enough time to settle into their resort experience and begin to notice the gaps between their expectations and reality. Rachel had coordinated with Carlos to monitor her family's experience and provide updates about their satisfaction levels and any complaints they might be expressing. The reports from Costa Rica during her family's first few days were exactly what Rachel had anticipated. They were enjoying the beautiful location and comfortable accommodations, but they were also encountering the standard tourist experience they had never expected to face. Wait times for restaurant reservations, crowded pool areas, generic tour groups with dozens of other travelers, and service staff who were polite but not particularly attentive to their specific preferences. Eleanor had complained to the resort staff about the lack of private seating areas she thought had been arranged for them. Sophia was frustrated by the standard Wi-Fi speed and the absence of the private photography session she had expected to be included in their package. Their parents were confused about the transportation arrangements and disappointed by the general tour experiences they had anticipated would be more personalized and exclusive. Carlos reported these complaints to Rachel with obvious amusement. "They keep mentioning that they were expecting something different based on the planning process," he explained during one of their phone conversations. "They seem to think there was some kind of miscommunication about what was included in their reservation." "What exactly are they saying?" Rachel asked, curious about how her family was interpreting their disappointment. "The older sister keeps asking to speak with the person who arranged their booking," Carlos replied. "She says there were specific upgrades and experiences that were supposed to be included, but she can't provide any documentation about these arrangements." The parents seem less concerned but definitely confused about the difference between what they expected and what they're receiving. This feedback confirmed that Rachel's plan was working exactly as intended. Her family was experiencing the gap between their expectations and reality, but they had no way to understand this gap existed because they had excluded the person responsible for creating their elevated expectations in the first place. Rachel's own departure for Costa Rica was carefully planned to maximize the impact of her arrival. She would appear at the resort during her family's 4th day, when their disappointment about the standard tourist experience would be reaching its peak, but before they had completely adjusted their expectations to match their reality. Her own accommodation reservation was at the same resort, but in the upgraded suite that her family had originally been intended to receive. She had arranged for a private airport transfer, personalized welcome amenities, reserved poolside cabana, and a full range of exclusive experiences that had been removed from her family's itinerary. The contrast between her reception at the resort and theirs would be impossible for them to ignore, especially when the staff began treating her as a VIP guest while continuing to provide standard service to her family members. She was prepared for their questions, confusion, and eventual realization that she had been the invisible force behind their original vacation plans. This confrontation would require careful handling. Rachel's goal was education rather than humiliation, and she wanted to avoid creating a scene that would reflect poorly on her professional relationships or the resort's reputation. She planned to reveal her role gradually, allowing her family to piece together the connection between her expertise and their vacation experience through observation rather than dramatic declaration. The morning of her departure, Rachel felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness that reminded her of the anticipation before launching a particularly challenging project for one of her professional clients. She had invested significant time, money, and emotional energy in creating this elaborate demonstration, and the outcome would depend on factors beyond her complete control. As her plane lifted off toward Costa Rica, Rachel reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The years of being undervalued by her family, the accumulated frustration of having her contributions taken for granted, and the shock of being excluded from an experience she had created had all led to this opportunity for revelation and potential reconciliation. Whether her family would learn from this experience or simply write it off as an unfortunate series of coincidences remained to be seen. But regardless of their reaction, Rachel knew that she had finally taken control of her own narrative and demonstrated her worth in a way that could not be ignored or dismissed. The plan was set, the pieces were in motion, and in less than 24 hours, the Chen family vacation would take a turn that none of them had anticipated. Rachel smiled as she settled into her first-class seat, courtesy of her professional connections and personal determination to never again allow herself to be treated as disposable by the people who should value her most. Rachel's private car glided through the Costa Rican countryside as the late afternoon sun cast golden shadows across the tropical landscape. The luxury vehicle was a stark contrast to the standard resort shuttle that had transported her family from the airport 3 days earlier, and the personalized service began before she even reached her destination. Her driver, Miguel, had been briefed about her preferences and had prepared chilled towels, her favorite bottled water, and a selection of local fruits for the journey. The resort came into view as they rounded a curve in the coastal highway, its white buildings gleaming against the azure Pacific backdrop. Rachel had seen countless photos of the property during her planning process, but experiencing it firsthand still took her breath away.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
The architecture seamlessly blended modern luxury with traditional Costa Rican design elements, creating an atmosphere that felt both sophisticated and authentically local. As Miguel pulled into the resort's circular driveway, Rachel could see her family in the distance, clustered around the main pool area. Eleanor was standing with her hands on her hips, clearly engaged in what appeared to be a heated conversation with a staff member. Sophia was taking photos of her lunch, though her usual enthusiasm seemed dampened by something Rachel couldn't identify from this distance. Their parents were seated at a table nearby, David scrolling through his phone with obvious frustration, while Linda gestured emphatically about something. Even from across the resort grounds, Rachel could sense the tension radiating from her family group. Their body language suggested disappointment and irritation, emotions that were completely at odds with the tropical paradise surrounding them. She felt a complex mixture of satisfaction and guilt at witnessing their discomfort, knowing that she was directly responsible for the gap between their expectations and their current experience. Carlos emerged from the resort's main building before Rachel had even exited her vehicle, his professional smile warming into genuine pleasure as he recognized her. His welcome was exactly the kind of personalized attention that her family had been expecting but not receiving during their stay. 2 bellhops immediately appeared to handle her luggage, while Carlos personally escorted her through the resort's exclusive VIP entrance, bypassing the main lobby entirely. "Miss Chen, it's such a pleasure to have you with us," Carlos said as they walked through a private corridor decorated with original local artwork. "Your suite is ready, and we've prepared everything according to your preferences. The champagne you requested is chilled, and the fresh orchids were delivered this morning from our private greenhouse." The contrast between this reception and her family's standard check-in process 3 days earlier could not have been more pronounced. Rachel had specifically requested updates about her family's arrival experience, and Carlos had reported that they had waited nearly 30 minutes in the main lobby while their rooms were prepared, then been given basic resort orientation materials and directions to find their accommodations independently. "How has my family been settling in?" Rachel asked as they approached the elevator that would take them to the resort's exclusive top-floor suites. Carlos's professional demeanor remained intact, but Rachel detected a hint of diplomatic amusement in his response. "They've been adjusting their expectations about what level of service to anticipate during their stay. The learning curve has been somewhat steep, but our standard guest experience is still quite excellent by most measures." This carefully worded assessment confirmed what Rachel had already observed from her distant view of her family's current state. They were encountering the reality of vacation life without the benefit of her behind-the-scenes coordination, and that reality was apparently falling short of their assumptions about what their money had purchased. The elevator opened directly into Rachel's suite, revealing a space that was significantly larger and more luxurious than the standard rooms her family had been assigned. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic ocean views, while the private terrace included a hot tub, outdoor dining area, and direct access to a secluded section of beach that was reserved exclusively for the resort's highest-tier accommodations. "Your private chef will arrive at 7 this evening for the welcome dinner you requested," Carlos continued as he showed Rachel through the suite's various amenities. "The menu has been customized based on your dietary preferences, and we've arranged for local musicians to provide background entertainment on your terrace." Every detail of Rachel's arrival and accommodation represented the level of experience her family had originally been intended to receive. The irony was lost on no one, particularly Rachel herself, who was staying in the upgraded suite that Eleanor's medical conference hosting experience had led her to expect, eating the personalized cuisine that Sophia had assumed would be documenting for her social media content, and enjoying the exclusive access that her parents had believed their financial investment had secured. As Carlos departed and Rachel settled into her suite, she positioned herself strategically on her private terrace where she could observe her family's activities in the main resort areas below. The physical elevation of her position seemed symbolically appropriate, given that she was literally looking down on the family members who had decided she was dispensable to their vacation experience. Her family's afternoon appeared to be dedicated to attempting various resort activities with mixed results. Eleanor had signed up for what she clearly expected to be a private yoga session, but was instead participating in a crowded group class on the main beach alongside 24 other guests. Her rigid posture and frequent glances toward the resort staff suggested that she was not pleased with this arrangement and was probably planning to voice her dissatisfaction at the earliest opportunity. Sophia was struggling with what appeared to be technical difficulties related to the resort's standard internet service. Rachel could see her moving around the pool area with her phone held high, apparently searching for better connectivity to upload her content. The private high-speed internet access that Rachel had originally arranged for the family would have eliminated this problem entirely, but Sophia had no way of knowing that her current frustrations were directly related to the modifications Rachel had implemented. Their parents had attempted to make reservations at the resort's signature restaurant for that evening, only to discover that the exclusive seating area Rachel had prearranged was no longer available to them. Instead, they had been offered a standard table in the main dining room with a reservation time that was nearly 2 hours later than they preferred. David's visible agitation suggested that he was not accustomed to being told that his preferred dining time was unavailable. The accumulation of these minor disappointments was clearly wearing on her family's collective mood. Rachel watched as they gathered for what appeared to be a strategy meeting near the pool bar, their animated discussion suggesting that they were trying to determine whether these service issues represent problems they should be complaining about or simply the normal resort experience they should be accepting. What her family couldn't know was that they were experiencing exactly the level of service that any other guests would receive at this resort without special arrangements or personal connections. Rachel's own evening unfolded exactly as she had planned, with every detail executed flawlessly by staff members who treated her as a valued industry colleague rather than just another paying guest. Her private chef prepared a spectacular dinner featuring locally sourced ingredients and traditional Costa Rican preparations with modern presentations. The musicians who performed on her terrace were the same artists who typically provide entertainment only for the resort's most exclusive events. As darkness fell and the resort's evening activities began, Rachel could hear the sounds of her family's dinner drifting up from the main restaurant below. Their voices carried across the tropical evening air, and she could detect frustration in their tone even without being able to distinguish specific words. The dining experience they were having was perfectly acceptable by objective standards, but it was clearly not meeting their subjective expectations. The next morning brought Rachel's first direct interaction with her family since arriving at the resort. She had planned this encounter carefully, timing her appearance at the main breakfast buffet to coincide with her family's typical morning routine. Her strategy was to allow them to discover her presence naturally rather than staging a dramatic reveal that might create the kind of scene that would reflect poorly on the resort's atmosphere. Eleanor spotted her first, nearly dropping her coffee cup as Rachel appeared in the breakfast area wearing an elegant white sundress and the relaxed expression of someone who was thoroughly enjoying their vacation experience. The shock on Eleanor's face was immediately followed by confusion, then rapid calculations as she tried to process why Rachel was present at a resort where she was supposedly not invited. "Rachel?" Eleanor's voice carried across the breakfast area, causing Sophia, David, and Linda to turn simultaneously toward the sound. The collective expression of surprise on their faces would have been comical under different circumstances, but Rachel felt only a mixture of nervous anticipation and grim satisfaction as she approached their table. "Good morning, everyone," Rachel said with studied casualness as she joined them at their table. "Beautiful place you chose for the family vacation. I can see why you were so excited about coming here." The silence that followed her greeting lasted several long seconds as her family processed the implications of her presence. Linda was the first to recover her composure, though her smile appeared strained as she gestured toward an empty chair at their table. "Rachel, sweetheart, what a wonderful surprise. We had no idea you were planning to come to Costa Rica. Are you staying at this resort as well?" Linda's tone suggested that she hoped the answer would be negative, that perhaps Rachel was staying elsewhere and had simply stopped by for a brief visit. I am indeed staying here, Rachel confirmed as she settled into the offered chair. Actually, I arrived yesterday afternoon. I've been having the most incredible experience. The service here is absolutely exceptional when you know how to access the right amenities. David leaned forward with the expression he typically wore when trying to understand a complex business transaction. I'm confused about the timing, Rachel. How did you manage to get a reservation here? We booked this place months in advance, and we were told it was completely sold out for the entire season. Professional connections, Rachel replied with a slight smile. You'd be amazed what becomes possible when you work in the luxury travel industry and maintain good relationships with property management teams. Sometimes the impossible reservation becomes available with the right approach. David leaned forward with the expression he typically wore when trying to understand a complex business transaction. I'm confused about the timing, Rachel. How did you manage to get a reservation here? We booked this place months in advance, and we were told it was completely sold out for the entire season. Professional connections, Rachel replied with a slight smile. You'd be amazed what becomes possible when you work in the luxury travel industry and maintain good relationships with property management teams. Sometimes the impossible reservation becomes available with the right approach. Sophia had been uncharacteristically quiet during this exchange, but Rachel could see her younger sister's mind working to process the information being shared. Sophia's social media career had taught her to be observant about details that others might miss, and she was clearly beginning to piece together elements of the situation that didn't align with her previous understanding. Wait, Sophia said slowly, her phone forgotten on the table beside her untouched breakfast. Rachel, you work in luxury travel coordination. You arrange these kinds of experiences for your clients all the time. Her voice carried the dawning realization of someone who was beginning to understand a truth they had previously overlooked. Eleanor's medical training had similarly sharpened her analytical abilities, and she was also beginning to connect dots that had previously seemed unrelated. The reservation difficulties we've been having, the differences between what we expected and what we're actually experiencing, the staff's confusion when we mention arrangements that don't seem to be documented anywhere. What exactly are you suggesting? David asked, though his legal background had already led him to conclusions he wasn't ready to articulate explicitly. Rachel decided that the moment had arrived for complete transparency. I'm suggesting that you might want to consider who actually arranged this entire vacation experience for your family, who researched the destination options, identified this specific resort, negotiated the reservation during peak season, coordinated all the transportation arrangements, and organized every detail of your itinerary. The breakfast area around them continued to buzz with the normal sounds of resort morning activity, but at their table, silence settled like a heavy blanket as her family absorbed the full implications of what Rachel was revealing. She could see understanding dawning on their faces, accompanied by the uncomfortable realization that their assumptions about the vacation arrangements had been fundamentally incorrect. You arranged this trip, Linda said quietly, her statement carrying the weight of recognition rather than surprise. The entire reservation, all the planning, everything we've been experiencing here, you coordinated all of it through your professional connections. That's correct. Every detail of your Costa Rican vacation was arranged through my industry relationships and expertise. The resort reservation that you thought was remarkably fortunate was actually the result of specific favors I requested from colleagues I've worked with for years. The exclusive experiences you were anticipating were negotiated through personal connections that took me years to develop. Eleanor's face had gone pale as the implications continued to unfold in her mind. The arrangements that aren't working out the way we expected, the service level that seems different from what we thought we were getting, that's because you modified our reservation after we decided to exclude you from the trip. I didn't modify anything, Rachel corrected gently. I simply removed the upgrades and special arrangements that my personal connections had made possible. What you're experiencing now is exactly what any other family would receive if they had booked this vacation without the benefit of my professional relationships. It's still an excellent resort experience, just not the extraordinary experience my expertise had originally created for you. The weight of their collective realization settled over the table like a cloud passing over the sun. Rachel could see her family processing not just the immediate implications of her revelation, but also the broader understanding of how fundamentally they had misunderstood her professional capabilities and personal value. Sophia was the first to find her voice after the extended silence. We asked you to contribute $3,000 to a vacation that you had personally arranged and that we then excluded you from attending. We literally made you pay for your own work and then told you that you couldn't benefit from the results of that work. That's a very accurate summary, Rachel agreed. David's legal mind was clearly working through the ethical implications of their behavior. We didn't just exclude you from a family gathering, we excluded you from experiencing the results of your own professional expertise and personal effort, while still expecting you to subsidize the experience for the rest of us. Also accurate, Rachel confirmed. Linda looked stricken as she began to understand the depth of their oversight. Rachel, honey, we had no idea that you were the one who made all of this possible. When we discussed the vacation arrangements, we thought you were just contributing financially like the rest of us. We didn't realize that you were actually the person responsible for creating the entire experience. Why didn't you tell us? Eleanor asked, though her tone suggested that she already suspected the answer. Rachel considered this question carefully before responding. When would have been the appropriate time for me to mention it? During the family dinner when you decided that my presence would bring down the mood of your perfect vacation? During the conference call when you explained that excluding me was actually beneficial to my financial situation? Or perhaps during one of the many conversations about vacation planning where my input was acknowledged politely and then dismissed in favor of someone else's preferences? The accuracy of Rachel's observations was apparently too pointed for immediate response. Her family sat in uncomfortable silence as they processed the reality of their treatment of her and the consequences that had resulted from their decisions. So, what happens now? David finally asked. How do we fix this situation? That depends, Rachel replied, on what you think needs to be fixed. You wanted a family vacation without me, and you're having exactly that experience. I wanted to understand what it felt like to be valued for my professional expertise and personal contributions, and I'm having exactly that experience as well. From my perspective, everyone is getting what they asked for. Eleanor shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Rachel, we clearly made a mistake. We didn't understand the situation fully, and we made decisions based on incomplete information. But we're family, and family should be able to work through misunderstandings like this. I agree completely, Rachel said. Family should be able to work through misunderstandings. The question is whether this was actually a misunderstanding or whether it was a pattern of behavior that finally became visible because the consequences affected your vacation experience. Sophia had been scrolling through her phone during this conversation, and she suddenly looked up with an expression of dawning comprehension. Rachel, I've been reading about this resort online, and the standard guest experience people are describing is exactly what we've been having. But the reviews from VIP guests and industry professionals describe something completely different. Private services, exclusive access, personalized experiences, upgraded everything. That's because there are different levels of service available depending on your connections and how your reservation is arranged, Rachel explained. Most guests have a wonderful time with the standard experience, but guests who are connected to the industry or who book through certain relationships receive access to amenities and services that aren't generally available. And you originally arranged for us to have the VIP level experience, David said, his understanding of the situation becoming more complete. I did, but when you decided that my presence would detract from your family bonding experience, I adjusted our arrangements accordingly. It seemed logical that if I wasn't going to be part of the vacation, then the benefits of my professional connections shouldn't be part of the vacation either. Linda reached across the table and placed her hand over Rachel. Sweetheart, we owe you a sincere apology. We clearly didn't understand what you had contributed to this trip, and we definitely didn't consider how our decision to exclude you would feel from your perspective. We were focused on our own preferences and assumptions, Eleanor added. We didn't think about the fact that you might actually want to be included in a family vacation, especially one that showcased your professional expertise. Rachel appreciated their apologies, but she also recognized that this conversation represented only the beginning of a more complex process of addressing their family dynamics. The immediate situation of the vacation arrangements could be resolved relatively easily, but the underlying patterns of behavior that had led to this situation would require more sustained attention. I appreciate your apologies, Rachel said carefully. But I think it's important to recognize that this situation didn't develop overnight.
This is the result of years of treating my contributions as invisible and my preferences as less important than everyone else's comfort and convenience. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Carlos, who approached their table with the professional discretion that had made him successful in luxury hospitality management. His presence reminded Rachel that they were having this family discussion in a public space where other guests might be observing their interaction. "Miss Chen," Carlos said with a warm smile, "I wanted to let you know that your private tour arrangements for this afternoon have been confirmed. The helicopter will arrive at 2 o'clock for your volcano expedition, and the marine biologist will meet you at the private dock at 4:30 for your dolphin observation experience." The impact of Carlos's announcement on Rachel's family was immediate and unmistakable. These were exactly the kinds of exclusive experiences they had been expecting to enjoy during their vacation, and hearing about them being offered to Rachel while they sat with their standard resort itinerary was a powerful demonstration of the difference her professional connections could make. "Carlos," Rachel said, "I'd like you to meet my family. They're also guests here this week." Carlos's professional smile remained intact, but Rachel could see recognition in his eyes as he connected her family members to the guests who had been expressing dissatisfaction with their standard service level over the past few days. His greeting was polite but noticeably less enthusiastic than his interaction with Rachel. "Of course, it's a pleasure to meet you all. I hope you're enjoying your stay with us." "We are," David replied, though his tone suggested that his enjoyment was qualified. "Though we've been having some confusion about the arrangements that were supposed to be included in our reservation." Carlos glanced at Rachel before responding, clearly understanding the family dynamics at play. Resort arrangements can sometimes be complex, especially when there are changes to the original booking specifications. I'd be happy to discuss your specific concerns with you privately if that would be helpful. After Carlos departed, Rachel's family sat in contemplative silence as they processed the implications of what they had just witnessed. The demonstration of Rachel's professional standing and the exclusive access that came with her industry connections had been more effective than any verbal explanation could have been. "Those experiences that Carlos mentioned," Sophia said quietly, "the helicopter tour and the private marine biology guide, those were supposed to be part of our family itinerary, weren't they?" "They were," Rachel confirmed, "along with several other exclusive experiences that are no longer available to you because I removed them when I adjusted your reservation to reflect my exclusion from the trip." Eleanor looked genuinely stricken. "Rachel, we didn't just exclude you from our vacation, we excluded ourselves from the vacation you had created for us. We turned down the extraordinary experience you had arranged in favor of a standard tourist experience, and we did it because we thought your presence would somehow diminish our enjoyment." "That's a very astute observation," Rachel agreed. "Can we fix this?" Linda asked. "Can you restore the original arrangements so that we can all enjoy the experience you planned for us?" Rachel considered this question carefully. The technical answer was that some of the arrangements could probably be restored, though it would require additional coordination with her industry contacts and might not be possible for all of the experiences that had been removed. The more complex answer involved whether she wanted to extend that effort for family members who had demonstrated such a fundamental misunderstanding of her value and contributions. "The question isn't whether the arrangements can be restored," Rachel said finally. "The question is whether you've learned anything from this experience that would prevent the same pattern from repeating itself in the future." David leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "You're asking whether we've gained insight into how we've been treating you, not just during this vacation planning process, but in our family relationships generally." "That's exactly what I'm asking." The conversation that followed was the most honest discussion Rachel had ever had with her family about their dynamics and relationships. For the first time, her parents and sisters acknowledged the pattern of taking her contributions for granted while failing to recognize her achievements or consider her preferences. They discussed the assumptions they had made about her financial situation, her career satisfaction, and her desire for family inclusion. Eleanor admitted that she had viewed Rachel's work as less prestigious than her own medical career, failing to recognize the sophistication and expertise required for luxury travel coordination. Sophia acknowledged that she had never considered how her own social media success might overshadow Rachel's professional accomplishments in their parents' perception. David and Linda expressed genuine surprise at learning about the extent of Rachel's industry connections and the level of service she could access through her professional relationships. "I think we've all been guilty of underestimating what you do and who you are," Linda said as their breakfast conversation approached its second hour. "We've been so focused on traditional measures of success that we failed to recognize the unique value of what you've built in your career. And we've been so comfortable with your willingness to help solve our problems that we stopped considering whether we were reciprocating that support." Rachel appreciated their newfound awareness, but she also recognized that real change would require sustained effort rather than simply good intentions expressed during a moment of crisis. "I'm glad we're having this conversation," she said, "but I also want to be realistic about what happens next. Acknowledging the problem is important, but it's only the first step in changing the patterns that created the problem." "What would you like to see happen?" Sophia asked, "both for the rest of this vacation and for our family relationships going forward?"
Rachel had been considering this question since the moment she decided to implement her demonstration of professional capabilities. "For this vacation, I'd like to be included as a full family member rather than being treated as either an outsider or a service provider. I'd like my expertise to be acknowledged and my contributions to be recognized. And I'd like to enjoy some of the exclusive experiences I arranged, even if we can't restore all of them. And for our family relationships generally," Eleanor prompted, "I'd like to see evidence that you value my professional achievements and personal qualities for what they are, rather than constantly comparing them to your own career paths or treating them as less significant. I'd like to be consulted about family decisions that affect me, rather than being informed about conclusions you've reached without my input. And I'd like to see reciprocity in our relationships, where I'm not always the one providing assistance without receiving support in return." The requests Rachel outlined were reasonable and specific, which made it difficult for her family to dismiss them or argue that they were unrealistic. The conversation concluded with agreements about how they would approach the remainder of their vacation and commitments about changing their behavior in future family interactions. Carlos appeared again as they were finishing their extended breakfast discussion, and this time his interaction with the group reflected a different dynamic. "Miss Chen, I wanted to update you on the modifications we discussed for your family's experience. We've been able to restore several of the original arrangements, including the private dining experience tonight and the guided nature tour tomorrow morning." "That's wonderful," Rachel replied. "And I assume my family will be included in all of these arrangements as originally planned?" "Of course. It will be our pleasure to provide the full VIP experience for your entire family." As Carlos departed for the second time, Rachel could see satisfaction and relief on her family members' faces. They were clearly pleased that the exclusive experiences would be restored, but she hoped they also understood that this restoration was a gift rather than an entitlement, and that it represented her choice to extend forgiveness rather than their right to demand accommodation. The remainder of their Costa Rican vacation unfolded as a fundamentally different experience than the first 3 days had been. With Rachel's professional arrangements restored and her expertise acknowledged, the family enjoyed exactly the kind of extraordinary vacation she had originally planned for them. The helicopter tour provided breathtaking views of active volcanoes and pristine rainforests. The private marine biology guide offered intimate encounters with dolphins and sea turtles. The exclusive dining experiences showcased the finest examples of Costa Rican cuisine, prepared by internationally trained chefs. Most importantly, Rachel was included as a full participant in all of these experiences rather than being treated as the invisible arranger of other people's enjoyment. Her family asked about her professional relationships with their guides and service providers, expressed genuine interest in her expertise about luxury travel coordination, and acknowledged her role in creating their memorable experiences. The change in dynamics was most noticeable during their group conversations and shared activities. Instead of being marginalized or overlooked, Rachel found herself being consulted about decisions and included in planning discussions. Her sisters asked thoughtful questions about her career and expressed genuine admiration for her professional accomplishments. Her parents engaged with her as an equal adult rather than treating her as the family member who needed guidance or support. By the final evening of their vacation, as they gathered on Rachel's private terrace for a farewell dinner prepared by her personal chef, the family dynamic had shifted in ways that seemed sustainable beyond their Costa Rican experience. The conversation flowed naturally among all family members, with Rachel's contributions being valued equally alongside everyone else's perspectives. "I want to say something before we head home tomorrow," Eleanor said, as they watched the sunset over the Pacific Ocean. "This vacation turned out to be completely different from what I expected, and I mean that in the best possible way. Not just because of the upgraded experiences, but because we finally had honest conversations about how we relate to each other as a family." "I think we all learned things about Rachel that we should have known years ago," Sophia added. "And we learned things about ourselves that we probably should have recognized even earlier." David raised his wine glass in a toast. "To Rachel, who created an extraordinary vacation experience for her family and then had the courage to teach us about taking her contributions for granted. And to family relationships that are based on mutual respect and genuine appreciation rather than just habit and obligation," Linda added. As Rachel accepted their toast and their acknowledgments, she felt a complex mixture of satisfaction and cautious optimism. The vacation had accomplished what she had hoped in terms of demonstrating her value and addressing their family dynamics, but she remained realistic about the challenges of sustaining these changes once they returned to their normal routines and old patterns. The true test of whether this experience had created lasting change would come in the months and years that followed, as they navigated family decisions and interactions without the dramatic catalyst of vacation crisis to focus their attention on their relationship patterns. For now, though, Rachel was content to enjoy the immediate fruits of her strategic demonstration. She was finally visible to her family as a complete person with valuable expertise and legitimate needs for respect and inclusion. The cost of achieving this recognition had been significant in terms of emotional energy and financial investment, but the outcome seemed to justify the effort. As the evening concluded and her family prepared to return to their standard resort rooms, Rachel remained on her private terrace, reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this moment of family reckoning and reconciliation. Tomorrow, they would all return to their separate lives, but the fundamental understanding they had reached about their relationships would travel with them. The vacation that had begun as an exercise in family exclusion had transformed into an opportunity for honest communication and mutual recognition. Rachel's professional expertise had not only been acknowledged, but celebrated, and her personal worth had finally been recognized by the people whose approval she had sought for so many years. Most importantly, Rachel had learned that she didn't need to compromise her own dignity or diminish her own accomplishments in order to maintain family relationships. The sound of waves breaking against the shore provided a peaceful soundtrack to her contemplation, as Rachel considered the future of her family relationships and her own approach to navigating them. Tomorrow, they would all return to their separate lives and established routines, but the fundamental understanding they had reached about their relationships would travel with them. The vacation that had begun as an exercise in family exclusion had transformed into an opportunity for honest communication and mutual recognition. Rachel's professional expertise had not only been acknowledged, but celebrated, and her personal worth had finally been recognized by the people whose approval she had sought for so many years. Most importantly, Rachel had learned that she didn't need to compromise her own dignity or diminish her own accomplishments in order to maintain family relationships. She could stand firmly in her professional expertise and personal worth while still extending forgiveness and working toward reconciliation with family members who had undervalued her contributions. The sound of waves breaking against the shore provided a peaceful soundtrack to her contemplation as Rachel considered the future of her family relationships and her own approach to navigating them. Tomorrow, they would all return to their separate lives, but the fundamental understanding they had reached about their relationships would travel with them. The vacation that had begun as an exercise in family exclusion had transformed into an opportunity for honest communication and mutual recognition. Rachel's professional expertise had not only been acknowledged, but celebrated, and her personal worth had finally been recognized by the people whose approval she had sought for so many years. Most importantly, Rachel had learned that she didn't need to compromise her own dignity or diminish her own accomplishments in order to maintain family relationships. The sound of waves breaking against the shore provided a peaceful soundtrack to her contemplation as Rachel considered the future of her family relationships and her own approach to navigating them. The demonstration she had orchestrated had been successful beyond her expectations, but she recognized that sustaining these improvements would require ongoing attention and commitment from everyone involved. For the first time in years, though, Rachel felt genuinely optimistic about the possibility of having authentic, reciprocal relationships with her family members based on mutual respect rather than conditional acceptance. The investment she had made in this elaborate lesson had yielded returns that extended far beyond the immediate satisfaction of proving her professional capabilities. As she prepared to conclude her own Costa Rican experience, Rachel felt a deep sense of personal accomplishment that had nothing to do with her family's recognition and everything to do with her own courage in demanding the respect she deserved. The vacation would end tomorrow, but the self-respect she had reclaimed would last indefinitely. The months following their Costa Rican vacation brought changes to the Chen family dynamics that exceeded even Rachel's most optimistic expectations. The transformation wasn't immediate or dramatic, but it was consistent and meaningful in ways that surprised everyone involved. The revelation of Rachel's professional expertise and the family's reckoning with their treatment of her had created a foundation for genuine mutual respect that continued to develop long after they returned home. Eleanor was the first to demonstrate concrete changes in her behavior toward Rachel. Within 2 weeks of their return, she contacted Rachel to request assistance with planning a medical conference retreat for her cardiology practice. Instead of treating this as a casual favor between sisters, Eleanor approached Rachel as a professional consultant, offering to pay her standard rates and acknowledging her expertise publicly to her medical colleagues. The retreat Eleanor organized became a showcase for Rachel's capabilities within their professional community. Rachel coordinated a 3-day experience at a luxury resort in the Sonoma Valley, arranging exclusive wine tastings with renowned vintners, private dining experiences featuring celebrated chefs, and educational sessions in settings that inspired creativity and collaboration among the medical professionals. The success of Eleanor's retreat generated immediate referrals for Rachel's business from other physicians and medical practices seeking similar high-end coordination services. More importantly, Eleanor began speaking about Rachel's work with the same pride and enthusiasm she had previously reserved for discussing her own medical achievements. She introduced Rachel to colleagues as her sister, who operated a successful luxury travel concierge business, emphasizing Rachel's expertise and professional accomplishments. Sophia's transformation took a different but equally meaningful direction. She began featuring Rachel's travel experiences and professional insights in her social media content, but she did so in a way that highlighted Rachel's expertise rather than simply using her as content material. Sophia created a series of posts about the value of professional travel coordination, showcasing some of the extraordinary experiences Rachel had arranged for clients while always crediting Rachel's skills and knowledge. This collaboration introduced Rachel's services to Sophia's substantial social media following, generating inquiries from potential clients who were interested in the kind of exclusive access and personalized experiences that Rachel could provide. Sophia's authentic enthusiasm for Rachel's work helped establish Rachel's reputation among a demographic of affluent young professionals who valued unique travel experiences and were willing to invest in expert coordination. More significantly, Sophia began seeking Rachel's advice about her own travel content creation, recognizing that Rachel's industry connections could enhance the quality and exclusivity of the experiences she documented for her followers. This consultative relationship represented a fundamental shift from Sophia treating Rachel as invisible support staff to recognizing her as a valuable professional colleague. David and Linda's changes were perhaps the most meaningful to Rachel because they reflected a fundamental shift in how her parents viewed her life choices and professional accomplishments. David began referring business contacts to Rachel when they expressed interest in luxury travel experiences, and he did so with genuine enthusiasm about her capabilities. He also started asking Rachel for advice about corporate retreat planning and executive travel arrangements, acknowledging that her expertise exceeded his own understanding of these areas. Linda's transformation was particularly touching because it involved personal acknowledgement rather than just professional recognition. She began scheduling regular one-on-one time with Rachel, mother-daughter lunches where the conversation focused on Rachel's interests, experiences, and perspectives rather than defaulting to discussions about Eleanor's medical practice or Sophia's social media success. During one of these lunches, Linda made an observation that crystallized the extent of the change in their family dynamics. I realize now that I spent years waiting for you to become someone different instead of appreciating who you actually are, she told Rachel over coffee at a quiet downtown restaurant. I was so focused on traditional measures of success that I completely missed the extraordinary things you were building in your own career. The family's monthly dinners at Linda's restaurant became genuinely collaborative gatherings where everyone's contributions to the conversation were valued equally. Rachel found herself looking forward to these meetings rather than enduring them, as the focus shifted from competitive achievement reporting to genuine interest in each other's lives and work. The most significant change, however, was in how the family approached decision-making and planning for shared experiences. Rachel's expertise was now consulted and valued from the beginning of any travel or event coordination, and her preferences were considered equally alongside everyone else's when making family plans. When the family began discussing their next annual vacation, the planning process reflected their transformed dynamics completely. Instead of Rachel being assigned logistical responsibilities while being excluded from preference discussions, she was included as both an expert consultant and an equal family member from the very first conversation. The destination selection process became a genuine collaboration, where Rachel's professional insights about different locations were weighed alongside everyone's personal preferences. Her recommendations about timing, accommodations, and activities were received with respect and enthusiasm, rather than polite tolerance followed by alternative suggestions from other family members. Eleanor suggested they return to Costa Rica to visit the resort where their family transformation had taken place, but Rachel recommended a different approach. She proposed a Mediterranean cruise that would allow them to experience multiple destinations while maintaining the luxury and exclusivity they had come to appreciate. Her detailed presentation about various cruise options, shore excursion possibilities, and exclusive access opportunities demonstrated both her professional expertise and her understanding of each family member's preferences. The family unanimously accepted Rachel's recommendation, and the planning process became a model of collaborative decision-making where everyone's input was valued and integrated into the final arrangements. Rachel coordinated every detail of their Mediterranean experience, but she did so as the acknowledged expert rather than the invisible facilitator. Their Mediterranean cruise exceeded everyone's expectations precisely because Rachel's expertise was fully utilized and properly appreciated. She arranged private shore excursions in each port, secured exclusive access to historical sites and cultural experiences, and coordinated dining and entertainment options that reflected both luxury and authentic local culture. The family's experience in Barcelona included a private tour of Gaudi's architectural masterpieces led by an art historian who was a friend of one of Rachel's regular clients. In Rome, they enjoyed exclusive after-hours access to the Vatican museums arranged through Rachel's connections with luxury tour operators. Their time in Santorini featured a private yacht excursion to hidden beaches and secluded coves that were inaccessible to typical tourist groups. Throughout the cruise, Rachel was celebrated as both the expert who had made these extraordinary experiences possible and the family member whose company enhanced their enjoyment of each destination. The transformation from being excluded from family vacations to being the central coordinator and valued participant represented a complete reversal of her previous role within the family dynamic. The success of their Mediterranean cruise established a new pattern for family travel, where Rachel's expertise was considered an essential element of their shared experiences rather than a convenient service they could utilize when needed. Her professional capabilities became a source of family pride rather than something that was taken for granted or dismissed as less important than her siblings' achievements. Beyond travel coordination, Rachel's confidence and assertiveness in family interactions continue to develop throughout the year following their Costa Rican experience.
She became more willing to express her opinions during family discussions, more likely to advocate for her own preferences when making shared decisions, and more comfortable establishing boundaries about how she wanted to be treated in various family situations. This increased confidence had positive effects on Rachel's professional life as well. The referrals she received from her family's networks were just the beginning of a period of significant business growth that reflected her enhanced reputation and expanded client base. Her willingness to advocate for herself in family relationships translated into better negotiation skills with clients and more effective business development strategies. Rachel also began speaking at industry conferences about luxury travel coordination, sharing her expertise with other professionals and establishing herself as a thought leader in her field. The confidence she had gained through confronting her family's treatment of her provided the foundation for presenting herself as an expert to her professional peers.
The personal growth Rachel experienced extended beyond her family relationships and professional development to include her own sense of self-worth and life satisfaction. For the first time in years, she felt genuinely proud of her accomplishments and confident about her choices, rather than constantly questioning whether she should be pursuing different goals or living up to different standards. This personal transformation was perhaps the most valuable outcome of her Costa Rican demonstration, even more meaningful than the improved family dynamics of professional success that had resulted from her actions. Rachel had learned that she could demand respect and consideration from the people in her life without sacrificing her relationships or compromising her values. The experience had also taught her family valuable lessons about recognition, appreciation, and mutual support that extended beyond their treatment of Rachel to improve their relationships with each other and with other people in their lives. Eleanor became more attentive to acknowledging her colleagues' contributions at work. Sophia developed a more authentic approach to her social media content that celebrated other people's achievements rather than just promoting her own brand. David and Linda became more intentional about expressing appreciation for the people who contributed to their business and personal success. As the anniversary of their Costa Rican vacation approached, the Chen family reflected on the profound changes that had resulted from what had initially seemed like a devastating family crisis. Rachel's decision to demonstrate her value rather than simply accepting her exclusion had created opportunities for growth and understanding that none of them had anticipated. The family's annual vacation planning for the following year became an occasion for acknowledging how much their relationships had improved and expressing gratitude for the lessons they had learned about treating each other with respect and consideration. Instead of being a source of stress and conflict, family travel had become a celebration of their shared connections and mutual appreciation. Eleanor suggested that they create a family tradition of choosing destinations that would showcase Rachel's professional expertise while also providing meaningful experiences for everyone. This proposal represented the complete transformation of Rachel's role from excluded family member to celebrated expert whose contributions were actively sought and appreciated. Sophia proposed documenting their family travel experiences in a way that would highlight the value of professional travel coordination while also sharing their family story of growth and reconciliation. Her suggestion reflected both her social media expertise and her genuine desire to celebrate Rachel's professional accomplishments. David and Linda expressed interest in funding an even more elaborate vacation experience that would allow Rachel to demonstrate her capabilities on the largest possible scale. Their enthusiasm for investing in experiences that showcased Rachel's expertise represented a fundamental shift from viewing her contributions as convenient services to recognizing them as valuable professional achievements. Rachel's response to these suggestions reflected her own growth and confidence. Rather than being overwhelmed by their attention or feeling pressure to exceed their expectations, she approached their proposals with the professional competence and personal assurance she had developed over the past year. She outlined several destination options that would provide extraordinary experiences while also serving as showcases for different aspects of her professional expertise. Her presentation was confident, detailed, and focused on creating value for her family while also advancing her own business objectives. The planning process for their next family vacation became a model of collaborative decision-making where everyone's expertise and preferences were valued equally. Rachel's professional insights guided their destination selection, but everyone's personal interests influenced the specific experiences and activities they would pursue. More importantly, the planning conversations reflected the mutual respect and genuine affection that had developed among family members who had learned to appreciate each other's unique contributions and individual worth. The family meetings that had once been sources of stress and comparison had become opportunities for collaboration and celebration. As Rachel finalized the arrangements for their upcoming family vacation, she reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point of mutual understanding and respect. The cost of achieving this transformation had been significant in terms of emotional investment and personal risk, but the results had exceeded her most optimistic expectations. The family that had once excluded her from their shared experiences now celebrated appreciated her expertise and valued her contributions as essential elements of their collective success. The professional recognition she had sought for years had been achieved not through changing her career path to match their expectations, but through demonstrating the value of the work she had chosen to pursue. Most importantly, Rachel had learned that she didn't need to compromise her own worth or accept treatment that diminished her dignity in order to maintain family relationships. She could stand firmly in her professional expertise and personal value while still working toward reconciliation and mutual understanding with people who had previously undervalued her contributions. The Chen family story had become one of growth, recognition, and transformation that extended far beyond the immediate resolution of vacation planning conflicts. Their experience demonstrated that families could change their fundamental dynamics when members were willing to confront uncomfortable truths and commit to treating each other with genuine respect and appreciation. Rachel's strategic demonstration of her professional value had achieved everything she had hoped for and more. She had gained recognition for her expertise, respect for her contributions, and inclusion in family experiences as an equal participant rather than a service provider. The family relationships that had once been sources of frustration and disappointment had become sources of support and celebration. As she looked toward the future, Rachel felt optimistic about continuing to build on the foundation of mutual respect and understanding they had established. The patterns of behavior that had created their previous conflicts had been replaced with approaches to family interaction that prioritized consideration, appreciation, and genuine connection. The vacation that had begun as an exercise in family exclusion had ultimately become the catalyst for creating the kind of family relationships Rachel had always wanted but never believed were possible. Her willingness to demand respect had been rewarded with genuine appreciation, and her professional expertise had been recognized as a valuable contribution to their shared experiences. The transformation of the Chen family dynamics served as a powerful reminder that change was possible when people are willing to confront uncomfortable truths and commit to treating each other with the respect and consideration that healthy relationships required. Rachel's strategic demonstration of her professional value had achieved everything she had hoped for and more. She had gained recognition for her expertise, respect for her contributions, and inclusion in family experiences as an equal participant rather than a service provider. The family relationships that had once been sources of frustration and disappointment had become sources of support and celebration. As she looked toward the future, Rachel felt optimistic about continuing to build on the foundation of mutual respect and understanding they had established. The patterns of behavior that had created their previous conflicts had been replaced with approaches to family interaction that prioritized consideration, appreciation, and genuine connection. The vacation that had begun as an exercise in family exclusion had ultimately become the catalyst for creating the kind of family relationships Rachel had always wanted but never believed were possible. Her willingness to demand respect had been rewarded with genuine appreciation, and her professional expertise had been recognized as a valuable contribution to their shared experiences. The transformation of the Chen family dynamics served as a powerful reminder that change was possible when people are willing to confront uncomfortable truths and commit to treating each other with genuine respect and appreciation. Rachel's strategic demonstration of her professional value had achieved everything she had hoped for and more. She had gained recognition for her expertise, respect for her contributions, and inclusion in family experiences as an equal participant rather than a service provider. The family relationships that had once been sources of frustration and disappointment had become sources of support and celebration. As she looked toward the future, Rachel felt optimistic about continuing to build on the foundation of mutual respect and understanding they had established. The patterns of behavior that had created their previous conflicts had been replaced with approaches to family interaction that prioritized consideration, appreciation, and genuine connection. The vacation that had begun as an exercise in family exclusion had ultimately become the catalyst for creating the kind of family relationships Rachel had always wanted but never believed were possible. Her willingness to demand respect had been rewarded with genuine appreciation, and her professional expertise had been recognized as a valuable contribution to their shared experiences. The transformation of the Chen family dynamics served as a powerful reminder that change was possible when people are willing to confront difficult truths and commit to treating each other with the respect and consideration that healthy relationships required. Rachel's strategic demonstration of her professional value had achieved everything she had hoped for and more. She had gained recognition for her expertise, respect for her contributions, and inclusion in family experiences as an equal participant rather than a service provider. The family relationships that had once been sources of frustration and disappointment had become sources of support and celebration. As she looked toward the future, Rachel felt optimistic about continuing to build on the foundation of mutual respect and understanding they had established. The patterns patterns of behavior that had created their previous conflicts had been replaced with approaches to family interaction that prioritized consideration, appreciation, and genuine connection. The vacation that had begun as an exercise in family exclusion had ultimately become the catalyst for creating the kind of family relationships Rachel had always wanted but never believed were possible. Her willingness to demand respect